It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the planet, we are Red Eye Radio. Welcome and good morning. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. So this was in Associated Press yesterday, and it's interesting because you could have the judge in New York by the end of the week order that the Trump Corporation be dissolved. And this is really, really interesting because we have said all along this is a bogus case of fraud. And on appeal, would not be surprised if this is overturned. An Associated Press analysis of nearly 70 years of civil cases under the law showed that such a penalty has only been imposed a dozen previous times, and Trump's case stands alone in a significant way. It's the only big business found that was threatened with a shutdown without showing any victims or major losses. Lawyers for the state in Trump's civil trial have argued that the principles of fair play in business alone are enough to justify a harsh penalty. But even they aren't calling for the prospect of liquidation of his businesses and properties raised by the judge. And some legal experts worry if the judge goes out of his way to punish the former president with the worst-case scenario, it could make it easier for courts to wipe out companies in the future. This is basically a death penalty for a business, said Columbia University law professor Eric Harley. Is he getting his just desserts because of the fraud or because people don't like him? Associated Press review of nearly 150 cases since New York's repeated fraud statute was passed in 1956 show that nearly every previous time a company was taken away, victims and losses were key factors. Customers had lost money or bought defective products or never received services ordered, leaving them cheated and angry. What's more, businesses were taken over almost always as a last resort to stop a fraud that was in progress and to protect potential victims. They included a phony psychologist who sold dubious treatments, a fake lawyer who sold false claims he could get students into law school, and businessmen who marketed financial advice but instead swindled people out of their home deeds. In Trump's case, his company stopped sending financial figures about his net worth to Deutsche Bank and others at least 2 years ago, but the court-appointed monitor noted that was only after he was sued and that other financial documents continued to contain errors and misrepresentation. And although the bank offered Trump lower interest rates because he had personally agreed to guarantee the loans with his own money, it was not clear how much better the rates were because of any inflated figures, by the way, in which he had a disclaimer that the figures might not be correct.
Right.
The bank never complained. The bank didn't say they lost anything. Bank officials called to testify couldn't say for sure if Trump's personal statement of worth had any impact on the rates. This sets a horrible precedent, said Adam Leitman Bailey, a New York real estate lawyer, who once successfully sued a Trump condo building for misrepresenting sales to lure buyers. Added University of Michigan law professor William Thomas, who suffered here. We haven't seen a long list of victims. Dissolution of an empire? Trump, the Republican presidential frontrunner, has focused his anger at potentially losing his business at both the Democratic New York Attorney General, who brought the case, and the judge presiding over it. In an order last September that's currently under appeal, the state Supreme Court Judge Arthur Engoron said Trump had indeed committed fraud and should have the state certificates needed to run many of his New York companies revoked. He said Trump should then be stripped of control of those companies, which are the official owners of his Fifth Avenue headquarters and other marquee properties, and have them turned over to a receiver who will manage the dissolution of them. What the judge left unclear is what he meant by dissolution, whether that referred to the liquidation of entities that control the properties or the properties themselves. Asked specifically in court whether Trump's buildings would be literally sold off as in bankruptcy, the judge said he'd clarify at a later date. In a worse case, as interpreted by legal experts, the judge could decide dissolution means stripping the real estate mogul of not only his New York holdings, such as Trump Tower and his 40 Wall Street skyscraper, but his Mar-a-Lago club in Florida, a Chicago hotel, a condo building, several golf clubs, including ones in Miami, Los Angeles, and Scotland. For her part, New York Attorney General Letitia James has asked that Trump be banned from doing business in New York and paying $370 million, what she estimates is saved interest and other ill-gotten gains. But she never asked for a property sale and may not even want one, said one of the lawyers, Kevin Wallace, in his closing argument. I don't think we're looking for anything that would cause a liquidation of a business. The judge said that by January 31st, he will issue a ruling that is expected to decide on cash penalty and business ban and clarify his dissolution order. Notably, New York's anti-fraud statute, known as Executive Law 6312, is clear that a finding of fraud does not require an intent to deceive or that anyone actually gets duped or loses money. The Attorney General must only show repeated fraudulent or illegal acts, but the Associated Press analysis, based on a search of reported cases in all the legal databases, found that victims and losses were always a factor when it came to deciding whether to take over a business. A breast cancer nonprofit was shut down years ago, for instance, for using all of its $9 million in donations to pay for director salaries, perks, and other expenses instead of funding free mammograms, research, and help for survivors. And they go down through all of the different examples there. There may be more dissolved companies than AP found. Legal experts caution that some cases never show up in legal databases because they were settled, dropped, or otherwise not reported. Still, the only case the Associated Press found of a business dissolved under the anti-fraud law without citing actual victims or losses was a relatively small company closed in 1972 for writing term papers for college students. In that case, the Attorney General said the victim was the integrity of the educational process. So there you go. But they talk about the fact that Trump is the only one where they've ever done this to try to take away the entire company, where they couldn't show any, victims.
Right.
And if you're writing papers for students,
well,
if you're writing papers for students in school, that's fraud, because that's perverts the grades in a school.
Right. And here, the idea that you don't have to have a victim for him to be breaking the law, and there's no evidence of him breaking the law, they don't like the way he did business. But if they're able to successfully prosecute this and he gets a conviction and it's not overturned, tell me where you couldn't apply this.
In making her case against Trump, the Attorney General called to the stand a lending expert who estimated that Deutsche Bank gave up $168 million in extra interest on its Trump loans based on his calculations, as if Trump never offered a personal guarantee. But Trump did offer a guarantee. Even if his estimate of the personal wealth was exaggerated, in fact, the bank made its own estimate of Trump's personal wealth, at times lopping billions off of Trump's figures, and still decided to lend to him based on his personal guarantee. And testimony from Deutsche officials responsible for the loans suggested that deciding the right rate at which to lend, even absent Trump's personal guarantee, is not a simple calculation. You have no idea what it would be.
Exactly.
The Deutsche unit making the Trump business loans weren't the typical lending unit, but its private wealth division. The group often lends to rich clients, not only to earn interest, but to help its chances of winning the lucrative business of managing their vast personal investments and getting them to buy other bank services, something that testimony showed Deutsche was clearly hoping to do with the ex-president. Wow. Is mind-boggling.
Well, because the entire premise of this case from the state AG here is he was trying to gain favor from insurance companies and banks, financial institutions. Well, the fact of the matter is that everyone is trying to gain favor when they apply for a loan or they look to get a policy from an insurance company. When are you not trying to gain favor? Because it would be one thing if he came in and he said, I own these properties, and several of them he didn't even own. Well, that would be bank fraud. We already know what that is. That would be fraud, insurance fraud, whatever he's trying to accomplish with that. When are you not trying to gain favor?
You're always trying to gain favor.
There are right now, every insurance company on the planet has made an advertising campaign out of people trying to gain favor from buying insurance companies. What are you trying to do? You're trying to lower your rates. You're trying to gain favor. But and there's the false premise that they start on. What they're implying here, and there's the false premise, is that he did something illegal to gain that favor from insurance companies or banks. And he didn't. What he did was not illegal. He even had disclaimers on there. And there's no one, by the way, that is disputing whether or not he had disclaimers. He is routinely audited by the IRS. He is a global household name in the business world. You could argue that a bank vying for his business is trying to gain favor, their reputation, by doing business and being able to list Donald Trump or Trump Properties or Trump Incorporated as one of their clients. But that's not illegal. That's my whole point. Well, it's ridiculous to try and say that or put up the premise that gaining favor is bad.
Well, or the one point that they made, which is the $168 million. It's like, yeah, but the bank didn't care. Number one, the bank wasn't using that at all.
They were using his guarantee.
Right. If Trump might have given an appraisal and said, look, this is no guarantee, do your own appraisal here. And they said, well, will you make us a personal guarantee instead? Yeah, okay, fine. So that wasn't even part of the deal.
Right.
And they're using that to say, well, that's committing fraud. Well, is it committing fraud if you say, this is what I believe my property's worth? You do your own due diligence because I'm not guaranteeing that this is the actual amount. That's what I think it's worth.
Right.
Well, we don't even want to deal with that. We're just, you personally guarantee you'll do it? Yeah, it's a personal guarantee outside of anything over here.
That's what underwriters are looking at. That's all they're looking at. And what do we have?
And they went after him for that.
Right. Because it's about risk mitigation. That's the entire thing with insurance companies and banks. Risk mitigation. There's not one of them in this entire line of would-be victims that the AG's office is trying to make you believe exists.
And if the left doesn't understand why Trump has so much support, we just laid it out. It's like they're going after him for things that they'd never go after anybody else.
Yep.
And the only recourse, and the public sees this, and his supporters see it, and the Republican Party sees it, and a significant portion of them say, this isn't right.
Yep. And you just may well get him elected by doing this. And that's the thing, is that and this has to stop, whether he wins the election or not, this has to be over. This cannot stand. This kind of going after, and then states just deciding, well, we don't want him on the ballot. We don't want that person on the ballot.
Right.
Picking and choosing who gets to be on the ballot.
Let's make up a new parameters for RICO laws.
We'll just throw it, exactly. We'll just throw it all out there. We'll throw everything at them until they break. And they'll do that to him.
And you send a warning to the Republican Party, we'll come after you, too, if you decide to run.
If they do that to him, they'll do it to anybody.
866-90 Red Eye.
This morning's USDA Farm Report is brought to you by House Products. Tested, trusted, guaranteed since 1920.
More farmers are turning to direct marketing of their goods and commodities as both a way to engage with consumers and meet changing demands from such. And as Chad Hart of Iowa State University Extension points out, driving that outreach are younger farmers and ranchers, several of whom are trying to create their own niche within a family farm operation.
It's always been a game where the farmer, you wear many hats. But it used to be one of those hats was not, I have to worry about connecting with the consumer. Now it definitely is.
It's also not just about growing demand domestically.
Because when you're looking at our production, the idea is that we produce more than enough to meet our own needs, plus we depend upon selling to the rest of the world. So we're not only trying to adjust to how our consumers here within the U.S. are adjusting, but how they're adjusting internationally as well.
Examples of direct marketing range from roadside farm stands to farm-to-school or government product sales. I'm Rod Bain reporting for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
This report brought to you by Cenex Fuels and Lubes.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I want to play this audio and make sure you hear it. We played it early in the show, but we know a lot of people just waking up, ready to go to work. This is Karine Jean-Pierre yesterday. Just unbelievable, her answer here. Here we go.
What I will say, obviously our deepest condolences go out, and our heartfelt condolences go out to the families who lost three folks who are military folks, who are brave, who are always fighting, who are fighting on behalf of this administration, of the American people. Obviously, more importantly, we lost those souls.
Wow. It's just horrible.
Couldn't say men and women.
No, can't
say men
gender.
and women. Had
you
to
might
say
offend
folks.
someone.
And then the thing about the administration.
Fighting for this administration. No.
I mean, pure amateur hour here. But, I mean, this is how wokeness is burned into their brains. She could not. She was stumbling, knowing that she was going to say the men and women who died.
Right. Nothing heartfelt in what you just heard.
Folks.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. All right, our audio cut of the day, because this was just so bizarre. And this we're not going to play the whole audio cut because it goes on for a couple of minutes.
All right.
But it's a reporter and asking Karine Jean-Pierre about the fact of Biden saying that he will close the border. He'll close the border the day that he signs the bill from Republicans. Now, this is where Biden and the Democrats are now, Biden, especially the administration, is saying that he will close the border and trying to convince the American public. The only reason he hasn't been able to close the border is because he hasn't had congressional approval to do so. Uh-huh. And if Republicans give him the approval, he will close down the border. Uh-huh. Well, of course, reporters picked up on that because they remember when Donald Trump talked about closing down the border, and he was called a xenophobe and a racist. Right. And so a number of reporters asked one, and this one reporter went on for, he kept, it's funny because they just won't come out and say, look, they got to explain it. Well, because, many movement of people around, around the world into different countries and everything else. And you called Trump, every Democrat called Trump a xenophobe and a racist for doing that. Why doesn't this apply to you now that you are saying you're going to close the border?
Right.
All right.
Right.
And first, she just would not address the question. And so he kept asking it over and over again. And here was her final response to that.
Your question. What I'm saying to you, the new enforcement tools, right, that we believe that do not currently exist, that will be part of this bipartisan agreement. There are different definitions, right, of what that looks like, of what actually shutting down the border looks like, right? So we're going to let them work through it. We don't know what that looks like exactly, right? What we are asking for, what the president wants to see, is that we deal with the challenges at the border.
Why can't anybody answer a question? Number one, she says there's different definitions of shutting down the border.
No,
in essence, of closing the border, there are different definitions. Just like, well, it makes sense. Mm-hmm. Remember, I was exactly where you were, and you convinced me I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Because, remember, there are different definitions for what a secure border is.
Well, no, there's one definition. They just apply it to the wrong people. It's secure for those who want to come across the border.
Oh, okay. All right,
that's very secure.
All right. What I found interesting is she said the new enforcement mechanisms. What?
Yeah.
We don't know what they are.
Right. There's
new enforcement mechanism. And then a sentence and a half later, we don't know what they are.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what have we missed at the border? What would be this new enforcement mechanism that apparently nobody has thought about before that will magically work? Because she said it's not being done now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nothing's being done now. So, but it just yesterday, and we played. You go back and listen to our podcast the first couple of hours, and whether it was Kirby or her. It's absolutely, whether it's the border or the situation with Iran, it's just maddening. It really, really is.
This new thing that that the administration is hoping can be brought about with this new legislation is a group of people they're going to call the Border Patrol. These would be different than border processors. They might look the same. In fact, they might even have similar looking uniforms. But their purpose will be very different. This administration knows, this president knows there's not going to be a deal. This is all for show. There isn't going to be a deal.
Well, they can't win the argument. And maybe is that why you've got these GOP senators that seem so incredibly frustrated right now? Is that why they're so angry?
Because they got caught? Or
no, they can't make the argument. They know they can't win the argument. They know politically.
Well,
and I don't know if they expected that, because what they're trying to say is the implication is that the only reason that the House is against this and any Republican member of the Senate is against the deal that we don't speak of.
The deal of which we do not speak.
Going back to The Village, the movie
Well,
The
think
Village.
about it.
The
It's
deal
dangerous to wear red, which is the Republican color. So,
yes, exactly. But I mean, the deal that we don't speak of, well, this is what's been leaked through sources to both liberal and conservative outlets that thousands of people will be able to come across the border every day before you close it down. Well, if you can close it down, why don't you just close it down? Well, now that Mike Johnson came out and goes, no, nobody crosses the border. Our border policy is nobody crosses. Nobody gets across illegal. We don't allow people to come to the border and just run in.
right.
No, that's not going to happen. It's zero. And I'm so glad he did that because the Republicans are trying. I've never seriously, if the administration is basically the defense lawyers for Iran, because that's what you said a couple of weeks ago. Maybe it was a couple of months ago.
It was a few months ago, yeah.
You said, "My God, they sound like the defense attorneys, for Iran." Then these Republican senators are the defense attorneys for the Democrats.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what they sound like. It was, that was kind of my position before in who are you trying to convince these GOP senators that are on board? Explain to me as a conservative what the benefit is. Langford is saying, well, this is a rumor and that's a rumor. Well, it's not rumors. You're the only one saying it's a rumor, Langford. But where is Langford or anyone else that's saying, look at the benefits of this bill. Look at what this is going to do. They can't do that. Well, instead, what they're doing is defending the left.
Well, they can do it in generalized. Well, because if we have a full comprehensive immigration reform, then we can have the comprehensive immigration reform that will give us comprehensive immigration reform.
And it will show that the two parties can work together.
And then the two parties can work together in a bipartisan way to get comprehensive immigration. What's in the damn bill?
In the framework, and we have the framework of the comprehensive reform in when we have the framework of the framework.
And then they seem put off that the public wants to know, and Republicans want to know, what's in this bill? Yeah. You're doing this in secret.
Right.
This is about the border. Nobody trusts you on the border.
Right.
Am I right on that?
Right.
Excuse me. When you hear Republicans are working with Democrats to come up with comprehensive immigration reform, does anybody believe that will close the border? Is there any confidence when Republicans say that to anybody out there?
No.
I'll even throw Democrats. I don't think Democrats could defend it and say, oh, yeah, I mean, they plan on closing the border. No, they don't. And I'm just happy that Mike Johnson came out and said none. Because you and I are wondering whether they were throwing out all these leaks to the media and all these sources that it was going to be, 5,000, and then the latest one, the average of 5,000 a day over a 7-day period, or 8,500 in one day. Could you imagine being a Republican and sitting there and actually having back and forth like that's a negotiation around the table?
Right. No, I mean,
and any Republican who was even negotiating that, go, well, let's just make it. Can we make it 4,000 or 3,000? No.
We think we can get 2,004. Wait, that's down to 2002. Wait a minute. Hold on. We're down to 1,600. How does it not begin with zero?
It's such an easy. Now, they're terrified by that portion of the bill.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, but there's other portions, too, that you might like. Well, I don't care. If it leads with that, it's dead in the water. I go with Mike Johnson, zero.
Right.
Zero. And then zero. We close the border. Zero. Now, will some people still get across? Yes, but the goal is zero.
Yeah.
And then we wish to open up a normal amnesty, asylum a program for people that wish to come in. If it's obvious that there are people that are really being persecuted, Well, yeah, those are the exceptions there. But but the thing is, you can't trust this government even with something like that. You can't trust the administration because you know that they will look at current law, and they completely ignored it. They just said, well, let's open the border, overrun the system, and then say that's what's created the emergency, and so everything's an emergency that we created. And then blame it on climate change, Trump.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, it's just...
And that's the bizarre thing, too. All of a sudden, the numbers leak out, and they start blaming it on Trump. Remember, that went on for a couple of days where it was just, well, we can't believe Trump is getting in the way of... Getting in the way of what? Getting in the way of what?
Yeah, we got that now. Trump, because that's what the GOP senators are trying to say, that this is happening just because of Trump, as if the Republican Party hasn't been furious about illegal immigration for 25 to 30 years.
Well, and there's the thing. It's exactly like arguing with the liberals, because then their story changes, right? At first, it was all about Trump, and then they couldn't sell that, and then they had to bring in, Langford goes on TV. Oh, yeah, well, it's internet rumors, and it's you can solve all this.
Well, now it's back
Put
to
the bill up.
But now it's back to Trump.
Now they're throwing the entire pile on.
Now, they're throwing the entire pile, including Trump.
Exactly.
But this wouldn't be happening if Trump. Are you out of your freaking mind?
They're changing
this wouldn't
the
be
story.
happening if it wasn't for Trump.
And by the way, Trump is moving the goalposts on this. It's the GOP senators that are trying to defend this whole thing that are moving the goalpost. I want to see all versions of this bill. I know that's never going to happen. But the American people deserve to see every version, and every version that every GOP senator was on board for. I want to know.
Yeah, I'd like to see the first version of the bill and what it
and who was on board for it. Show me the head count along the way.
No, you can't have that.
Right.
You suckers, just listen. We're promoting a bill that we're telling you is good. Now believe us.
Right. They have to pass it so we can see what's in it. Thanks, Nancy. I've already been there.
It is frustrating, isn't it?
It
really
just
is frustrating.
Unbelievable.
Because this is coming from the Republican senators are enabling the basically the lies and the creation of the chaos on the border that was created by this president and defended by Democrats. These same Democrats that have been defending what's been going on at the border are now being enabled by GOP senators.
Who are just trying to, their only goal seems to be working with the Democrats.
Yeah.
Wow.
866-90 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Really interesting yesterday, because I did think about this yesterday, and then I saw the article out there. Fox had it, bringing back what former Bush and Obama defense secretary, he was 3 years defense secretary under Obama, expressed his displeasure with Biden's foreign policy positions in his memoir in 2014, writing that although Biden was a man of integrity, he believed the former senator and vice president has been, remember this quote, has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades.
Yeah.
He doubled down on those claims in his 2021 interview on 60 Minutes, saying he's got a lot wrong. Then he pointed to what he said was Biden's opposition to every one of Ronald Reagan's military programs to contest the Soviet Union, the first Gulf War, and their differences concerning the war in Afghanistan that he thought was just an abomination, which it was. Remember, forget about his policy on that. He lied to the American people about what the generals told him he should be doing.
Yep.
And we never found that out until the generals were specifically asked under oath in Congress if that's the advice that they had given Biden. They all said, nope.
Right.
And everyone said, you need to stay with a couple of thousand troops and keep the airport.
Right. And he still didn't do it.
Nope.
And he lied about what they said.
Yep.
Well, we knew something was going on when his top general stepped down halfway through the mission.
Yep.
We knew that.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.